we perceive athletes as strong champions, capable, able, resilient. When we see someone on the street, I don't think those are the words that would describe that person to them. So the idea is to take that same person, bring out the other good stuff in them, showcase that, and remind people that those things can live within somebody who's not demonstrating them. And if we can bring that out, then we can change lives.
Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast Network. Our purpose and passion is to highlight a nonprofit organization in each episode, giving that organization an opportunity to tell their story in their words to better inform and educate the respective communities they serve, as well as provide one more tool for them to share their message to constituents and donors. Hi, I'm Jeff Holden, Principal of Multipoint Content Strategies and Hear Me Now Studio. We provide this forum pro bono to help build stronger communities through shared voices and to both encourage and support the growth of local nonprofit organizations through podcasting. Homelessness. Everybody has an opinion. There are certainly those who end up on the streets for a variety of different reasons. But being homeless and hopeless, that makes a bad situation worse. We're going to have a discussion with a woman who had everything going for her and the potential for advancement in the world of sport through soccer, until something as frequent and common as an injury took her life down a very different path than what she ever could have imagined, in so many ways. Lisa Wrightsman was a collegiate soccer star with a bright future and goals and dreams like so many other athletes looking to advance in their sport. Her story and eventual shift from player to outspoken advocate for the homeless will amaze. She is currently managing director of the Sacramento chapter of Street Soccer USA. Earning her bachelor's degree at Sacramento State, she also holds multiple program records for the university soccer team and was a member of the All-Decade team. That success has enabled her to transform her passion for social initiatives with Street Soccer USA. Lisa has coached the USA women's street soccer team at the Homeless World Cup and in 2016 was selected as women's coach of the tournament. In 2020, she led the funding efforts for a new street soccer park in Sacramento, and through her and her Street Soccer USA team efforts, they are responsible for Sacramento being awarded the first ever Homeless World Cup in the United States. She's been recognized as a top 40 under 40 young professional by the Sacramento Business Journal, as well as a Woman Who Means Business awardee. She's a TEDx Sacramento Changemaker, 2020 Woman of the Year by Assemblymember McCarty, and a distinguished alumni of Sacramento State. I can't wait for her to share her story. Lisa, welcome. Before we get into the discussion of the Homeless World Cup, let's first get a better understanding of street soccer and what the goal of the program is here in Sacramento.
Sure. So Street Soccer USA is essentially a grassroots soccer-style effort with the goal of building up communities by empowering anybody who participates. And I say anybody because we work with kids, we work with teenagers, we work with adults, and then we have our demographic of the adults experiencing homelessness. The program originated working with homeless adults, and that was maybe 100 adults a year. And as the effects of our street soccer play and the style and our curriculum started to impact the adults in a positive way, we were learning from them that had they had that experience as a kid, they felt like they would have made different decisions. So now as we broadened it to the youth to make it accessible and free, which that's been effective, we're also starting to see everybody else in the middle is benefiting from it. So our mission statement is that we're using the power of the game to empower individuals of all ages and backgrounds and help them discover their strengths so they can take those positive steps forward. But we really do serve anybody and everybody.
I've played soccer my entire life, so personally I know and understand the impact that sports can have on you as an individual and the life skills that you learn that translate well beyond the field. And so personally, I have felt that it's helped me obtain, college soccer scholarship. It's helped me in my career. So knowing all of that, and then after college being introduced to Street Soccer USA, it was just a perfect place to kind of pay forward all of what I didn't realize I understand and learned about sports and about life. So that's personally where I started out becoming really passionate about it. And then as I saw some of the stories and lives that we were impacting, seeing families reunite, seeing players come to us with zero soccer skills, but willingness and interest in their lives becoming better and open to a community, open to learning something, seeing the impact this has had on individuals and some of the success stories and that are lasting impacts has caused me to really believe and stick around for any opportunity I can continue to pay it forward.
In the process, is it just the youth that plays and the adults would be coaching? Or is there player adults?
Both. So our adult program is for 16 and over ages. Generally, it's coming from, like they're recently out of a rehab program, alcohol, drug addiction, or incarceration, or the 18 to 24-year-olds kind of sleeping on couches and couch surfing. And we're trying to get them engaged to come to something consistent that they enjoy and they get a break from, and they can return to their day with more energy and motivation. Those adults have these competitions throughout the year as a part of keeping that engagement. And they work with our coaches, which I'm a coach. We have some other staff that's more of a mentorship. And they will, as they show up and demonstrate commitment, then we can kind of provide more opportunities for them. But what really happens is the size of fields we're playing on are smaller. So this is like a basketball court with walls around it, 4 against 4. So the style of play is different. And I say that because the games really facilitate opportunities for the adults to learn about themselves in ways that life does not yet. An example would be someone realizing that they can be a leader, or someone realizing that they can be a good team player and they can rally their team up, but maybe their day-to-day activities don't allow them to see that behavior in themselves. So we use the game to kind of bring out these qualities they already have, as well as teach them things like teamwork. Here's a strategy. Here's the plan. What happens if the plan's not working? And then we kind of identify those characteristics for them so that the thing they do after soccer, or they go to work the next day or whatever, they have that belief that they carry these qualities so as they can kind of keep moving forward in life instead of totally getting discouraged, which happens all the time. Our youth program is really targeted for the kids who cannot afford to play in our traditional soccer leagues, whether it's because their family can't support the 2 practices a week and the soccer games all day on Saturday, or it's, it costs too much. So we go to the schools that need it the most and have the least amount of activities and do after-school programming at school because the kids are already there, because that's generally where they're getting their meals from. So they go to school. That's where they get everything from. So we go to the schools that are like 90% to 100% free and reduced lunches. And then we have the street soccer park now, which is kind of where we can connect the different programs we work with. So in a day, we may have the youth come and have like a free little mini tournament. And then we might also have our adult practice later in that afternoon. We have had a lot of adults stick around well beyond like their tournament eligibility, and they are working and they're very grounded and they want to stay involved still. And so we do have some of our adults who are now coaches for the youth programs because they understand the power of the game, having fun, belonging, and learning in that environment. So they're kind of our best advocates when it goes to, trying to give that messaging to a 4th grader who's like, but I want to win. And you're like, well, it's yes. But like, what else is there to gain other than winning?
Right.
And they're perfect at having those conversations. So it's kind of like we work with everybody. We do work with refugees too, so that fall in our adult program and some, there are kids programs. But it's really just trying to give people a connection with the community, relationships, a little bit of mentorship, and then a space where they can also build their own network and develop at something that they can take back with them, personally.
And it sounds like just through sports alone, you develop some sense of structure, some sense of discipline, leadership, or teamwork, depending on the strengths and skill set of the individuals, which is incredible. How often do they play?
Our adults, we have one sort of open practice every Sunday from 2 to 4, and we invite the community, but we also make sure that space is available for those in our adult program. Some are currently eligible, which means that they have, within the last year, experienced some form of homelessness. We have our alumni who have been around for seven years, and they just keep coming back because it's
That's
free,
awesome.
It's fun, it's where their friends are, they get to help out. And then we have our leagues during the evening at the street soccer park, where we have a street soccer team in our co-ed league and our Monday or women's league. We have a team, and our Thursdays. So some of the players play more than once, but at the basic entry level is we don't want to dominate somebody's life.
Right.
we
want to help you, but we don't want to burden you.
The most important thing. So once a week usually.
Tell me a little bit how you got involved in all of this. What is your story to get you here?
Yeah, so I was 4 the first time I scored a goal in a soccer field, and I loved it. I can still remember it. It was that addicting to me.
My kids were picking dandelions at 4 on the soccer field.
I was going to the goal often, and so I kind of got hooked into the game, and I played it my whole life. Went to high school. I played at Elk Grove High School. I got a scholarship to play at Sacramento State. Did really well there for my 4 years. Offensive MVP for 3 of the 4, Rookie of the Year for the first, and then was kind of being groomed to go professional. There was a women's league that was opening. I think it had been created in maybe 2000 or 2001. So potentially I would be going to tryouts after my 4th year of college to go to the pros, and then the league folded. So I wasn't really prepared for that. And when I no longer was playing in college and having that structure and that routine, I really underestimated the void that I would feel by not having a team anymore too. I could still play semi-pro, but that was training on my own, working full-time, and really what I was missing was the games and the play with my team. And I started to realize that was where I felt the freest. That was where I had a lot of confidence. That was where I was productive, and I knew I was good at something, because going into the workforce shortly after that and looking for a career, I just felt very inadequate. I kept telling everyone I didn't have experience, all these things. It's actually, I did have experience.
Mm-hmm.
I did know how to be a leader. I did know how to show up for something. So either ways, but I had this, really dark period, and I filled that void with drugs and alcohol. Progressively got worse into going from alcohol to painkillers all the way to methamphetamines. So I graduated in 2002 as an offensive MVP. And then in 2009, I was sitting in a jail cell thinking I was going to be there for a long time. Mm-hmm. And probably if I kept using, I was going to die. So that was a difficult moment. And I had pretty much just torched my life. Nobody was willing to bail me out. And this wasn't the first time that I had been arrested, but it was the first time that was very quickly becoming my reality in my life. And I was fortunate enough to be able to get out on a promise to appear, and went home for a day at my mom's house, and I already started to get that itch to use again. So I was I got to get into a program. She helped me get into a 90-day residential program. I didn't know much about sobriety. I didn't know much about drugs and addiction as a disease. Didn't know much about the 12 steps or anything like that. So that was a very helpful, life-changing, really, opportunity for me. After the 90-day residential, I went to a 2-year employment program, sort of transitional living, where we would get support to sort of rebuild our lives back, clean up our history, become employable, get our IDs back, try to get our licenses, all those things, and stay sober at the same time. So I think the day I was moving in, one of the case manager that was mine, his name was Chris Mann, I hear the steps behind me, and he's like, "Hey, you're new." I was like, "Yeah." He's like, "You're Lisa." "Yeah." He's like, "I heard you play soccer." I was like, "Yeah, I did." And that was the end of the conversation. And then later I had found out that he had started working with a group of guys, teaching them to play soccer because he had learned of a street soccer tournament in the U.S. held by Street Soccer USA. And they were, if they could get a team together, he could take them to compete in this sort of homeless street soccer tournament with teams from the U.S. And, eventually they kind of wanted me to come out and play with them. And my attitude then was like, I spent my life with soccer. It did not leave me where I wanted to be. So I don't want anything to do with it. Mm-hmm. And ironically, the only thing I I probably tried to sell them, but wasn't able to, was my cleats. So eventually one day I went out and played with them. The great guys, very different than people that I used to play soccer with. A lot of tattoos, big dudes. They were very new at soccer. It was not a sport they played as a child.
And for the benefit of those listening, you are not a big person.
No, very small, petite. That's why I'm fast, because I run.
I'm going to imagine you smoked them and you taught them a lesson out there. And they were blown away.
I get fast because I'm afraid of getting caught.
Yes.
But we were all sober. They're all in recovery too. And I finally went out and played with them one day on this very small patch of grass with some little pug goals, and had a blast. And that day was the first day I had felt joy sober in at least 5 years. And it was so significant for me because I had been unhappy or maybe a little bit depressed for a long time without knowing it. And that day reminded me that I could experience joy again and sober, because I had not been happy, that I forgot that I could. Mm-hmm. I forgot that I was happy as a kid and all those things. So that was really significant for me. And then I continued to play with them, and it became a thing I look forward to. And I didn't care that the other guys weren't really good. It was actually a chance for me to offer something to them. This is the one thing I actually can give somebody. But we went to a street soccer tournament a few months later that we were practicing for in Washington, D.C., and that really opened my eyes up on what sobriety could look like. And I say that because when I got sober, when I go back to that day in jail, I was willing to be sober because I didn't want to die and I was tired of hurting people. But I was not expecting it to be a fulfilling life at all. So, you flash forward, now I'm, stepping off a plane, clutching all my few belongings, a little bit scared. And we walk into it was the Castles tennis stadium in Washington, D.C. that Venus and Serena Williams used to play on. And there's this big setup, a festival, we're being given uniforms, shoes, a press or a player badge, and being thanked for making the trip. And it's just what is going on? This is very different than my day-to-day life and how I experience, sobriety, in Sacramento at that moment.
Almost like professional.
Yeah, it was. And people knew everything about us. We were invited to the tournament because of our backgrounds and because of what we were doing about it. Mm-hmm. So it was the first time where you felt I think you could walk into a space and everybody knew everything about, there were no secrets and there was no shame. And that was really powerful. I had felt and carried shame with me for a long time. And so then we played, and it was super spiritual, very much camaraderie and sportsmanship. Some of the teams were very good. Some of them were not, but this was keeping them moving forward and giving them hope. I did play pretty well because I was a good player. We all had mohawks, so I had a mohawk. I was one of the few women playing. And at the end of the tournament, we didn't win, but it was just this really life-altering experience for me at that time. And I was nominated to go to a homeless World Cup in Brazil a few months later. And you can imagine that is not the World Cup I wanted to play for as a child.
Right.
But yeah, so then I, got geared up and I interpret this as like my second chance. I was like, this is going to make a great film someday. It's a total comeback story, So when I was training at this like small studio that I lived in, on this campus and like trying to do plyometrics with little tiles and like push-ups and all the things that I had access to. And I was like, okay, we got to win this thing. Like, I'll be able to stand out. I'll get scouted and I'll play in the U.S. again. And then we get to Brazil and I met my teammates and quickly realized that we were not going to win many games because my teammates were not experienced soccer players. They were truly living to play soccer, but not really experienced at it. And so we had our first game and we got crushed. And it was like, I think I still scored 4 or 5 goals, but I realized there's nothing that I can do as an individual that's going to be enough to change this outcome. We're here for 7 days, probably not going to be my comeback, but what else is there to gain from being here?
Right.
And that was getting to know my teammates. They were from different states, New York, Charlotte, Portland. I was in Sacramento. And, one of the women was 55. We had another girl who was 18, and she was a refugee.
Wow.
One girl was dealing with schizophrenia on the trip. But again, like being there and wearing their uniform, and they had been doing a lot of work at their programs at home. So they were, they were committed. And then for me, it was like, I can't help us win, but all they wanted to do was learn.
I was actually, I'm the exception where I played like 1986 Citrus Heights Golden Girls, like when I was, younger, but it was just meeting Lisa Wrightsman. And like I said, we shared the same journey of recovery. And she had shown me this epic cartwheel video of Eliana Giselle where she's playing in New York in the East Coast Cup. And she does a cartwheel in the middle of the fake out a goalie and scores a goal. And she showed me this clip and said, hey, you can come too. And I was like, I don't play soccer. What do you mean I can go to New York and go play soccer? And as soon as I graduated from my recovery home, which we both went to the same one, she picked me up and take me to practice twice a week. And I continuously went to go to practice and ended up being there for 2 years and then getting chosen to play in the 2014 Santiago, Chile Homeless World Cup.
So we spent the week losing a lot of games and then playing for fun outside of it, meeting the other countries. A lot of them were in recovery. A lot of them were in sobriety. Every player's story was phenomenal. It was incredible that they were smiling when you heard the life they'd had. And, we didn't get anything from being at this event. The winner is you show up with what you have, which is your story, and you leave with a great experience, but nobody's winning cars or houses. There's no money involved. And so, there's really just this atmosphere of pure joy. And I think people want to celebrate that they're alive, and it gives them hope for the future. But it was amazing to hear some of the lives that people have endured and are still smiling. And that was huge for me, that was where, you just realize that really hope and having a place to feel that sometimes is more powerful than anything somebody can give you. And so, we ended up winning a game. We practiced enough to win one game, and it felt like we won the World Cup. The teammates lost their minds. It was incredible. It was our first ever U.S. women's win because it was the first team we'd ever taken. But then I came back home and really believed that I was a different person when I came back home. I just saw something different, and I knew something different that was hard to explain, but I was no longer afraid of living anymore. And it motivated me to dig more into my recovery and more into the support, because you're like, all right, if that came out of doing this amount of work, what will come out of doing more? And a lot of the other people at the employment transitional program saw this difference in me, and they're like, I don't know how to play soccer, but I want to do whatever you just did because you're different. And I was happy, and I was confident and I could see a future. And I think that was what a lot of us were struggling with when you're rebuilding your life. You're doing the work, but it's hard to see too far out.
Yes.
Because you just can't imagine a life being happy, It's hard.
Right.
So that's what I got. And then I was like, well, I can't give you that, but I can teach you how to play soccer and maybe you can go to the next Homeless World Cup. And that's kind of how it started for us in Sacramento. Was like some women were like, I'll do anything to feel the way that you look like you feel. And we practiced and we took them to a street soccer national tournament and we took some to the Homeless World Cup. And like, sure enough, same thing for them. And so that was in 2011. And we've done it every year since.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
And so the formal Sacramento street soccer started, I think you said, about 2015, 16, to where the organization was developed. And clearly that came from your experience with the transitional housing into the soccer, to the joy of what you're sharing, to teaching people.
Yeah.
And here we are today.
So the Street Soccer USA, I believe, got their 501c3 in 2009, the national organization. And then in Sacramento, it was like we kind of were affiliated as a partner. So we were working with the women's. We created the women's program that didn't exist before. And then there was a men's team. And so Tiffany and I, my wife, we were focused on the women because that was the thing that like all the women had kids. They were struggling the most in this transitional. There was just nothing for them to do. It was very easy to fall backwards, and they were overwhelmed with being sober and their responsibilities. So we focused with them, and it was kind of like, well, maybe if this works, we keep doing it. Yeah. And so we did it every year for 5 years, and the impact continued to get better. The women were becoming better mothers. They were starting to support each other. And to give you an idea of what our first women's team looked like, it was kind of a cross between Orange is the New Black and a League of Their Own.
Oh, boy.
Kind of what that looked like. And it was amazing. Again, these were not athletic women, but they needed something to do. We laughed hysterically, and like they got their kids back. They started working. They went to the tournaments. And it just changed. I don't want to say it changed them. It brought out who they really were. And we were there to reinforce that vision.
What a great way to present that. Because a lot of times it's like, well, we need to change. You need to change. You need to change.
Yeah.
No, maybe I just need to develop what's best inside of me.
Yeah.
Because most of us are good.
Yeah.
And it's bringing it out.
Well, and they were doing things that were not good. But there was skill involved. And it's like, let's just redirect that. These are not lazy individuals. They were misguided and they were in the wrong direction. And you point them to a different goal, no pun intended.
Yes.
And it's like they know how to go towards a goal. So I think setting the goals and helping them to see that was probably the most important thing that we did. They were willing, they were going to go somewhere. They weren't going to sit still. And it's like, which one makes the most sense to you? And unfortunately, going back to what makes a lot of sense to other people because they can't envision something different.
Right.
So, with our tournaments and the Homeless World Cup, like that helps envisioning something different. And it also, you get to feel what it's like to be around people who are rooting for you and positivity, and you want to recreate that. So that's kind of where those trips and experiences play like a really big role, I think.
You mentioned the women starting as a women's organization, basically. Who do you see today as the primary beneficiaries of the program?
Oh, I mean, I think I want to lean towards the women's kids. We worked with the women, but they're all doing well now too. But I would say that a lot of those women had 3 or 4 young kids when we met them. And had they gone a different direction, those kids' lives would have been very different. And we stay close enough with some of them to see their kids now. And man, they were like 6 years old when we met them. But so when I look at their family, maybe the families, actually, because, I'd say the families in the sense that, I think a lot of families have gotten their daughter back, and then a lot of kids have gotten their parents back, and it's continued to grow versus the cycle has changed for them. But, everybody we work with, I think there's benefits too. I've gained a lot for sure.
What would you say if you had to estimate how many people are involved in the program today?
Today, like this week, we'll work with about 600 kids in the after-school program. Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah. And then we'll work with about 25 adults that we already have a relationship with. And we'll probably, who are in need of, they are marginalized, they're at risk. And then, we'll always connect with a few new people a week too.
Mm-hmm.
But during our park and our leagues, there's about 200 just sort of general population that come through the street soccer park.
That's amazing. That's I didn't realize it was such a big program.
Yeah, I'll tell you, there's days where I've done the same practice for a 5-year-old, a 10-year-old, a 15-year-old, 21-year-old, 30-year-old, 40-year-old. It works. So I've learned a lot as far as about people and what they respond to. And most of the people we work with, they want to feel different, and they want to feel like they can have fun, and they want to feel safe. Mm-hmm. And they need a break, so.
What a great program. I'd love it. I just love it.
Yeah.
And I had such a misunderstanding of it when I first heard it.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And so that's going to lead us into the second part of this conversation, because now we have an understanding of what street soccer really is and what its benefits are to the community and the people who participate, how it got to be here in Sacramento. You've mentioned a couple of times this thing called the Homeless World Cup, which I have a vision of what that is, but it's not the right vision when I just hear it. I understand it from the way that you relate it to me, but I don't think people really realize that this is a big event globally.
So the Homeless World Cup has existed since 2003, and every year we've taken this event to a city in the world to do two things. Our overall vision is to end global homelessness, but an important part of that is changing perceptions, both for the players who engage in these programs, but also for the public. So we've had great success over the years, taking this from cities like Rio de Janeiro, Melbourne in Australia, Santiago, Chile, Paris in France, the list goes on and on. That tournament is just a few hundred players, but it's representative of like 80 to 100,000 players per year in 70 plus programs around the world.
You mentioned Brazil. The last time it was held was pre-pandemic in Cardiff, Wales. And I'm going to let you share what the next iteration of the Homeless World Cup is.
Yeah, and that's common feedback. The Homeless World Cup is best communicated as a global initiative to end homelessness. That is a global problem that everyone experiences differently. Sacramento experiences it differently than New York does, and other countries.
The UK, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. The goal of the event is to change the perception of homelessness. And with the changed perception, it allows us to approach the problem differently. And we do this best, kind of what we talked about is like soccer, the game, has a wide reach. That is one thing that everywhere I've traveled is a part of the culture. It's a connector.
Yes, we come from different walks of life, but we're all still human. We're still here. We're having fun. And that ball is a universal language. That ball talks no matter what. You speak one language, I speak another, but we're friends. Once we get off the court, we take a break, we're friends.
For those of us that live here in Sacramento, I think we know what an amazing place it is to live, work, play, and it's really cool as a Sacramentan to be able to share that with the world. But I do think Sacramento has an interest in investing in their community and seeing it be the best it can be, and as a great model to show other cities as well. For me personally, having played at Sac State, been in Sacramento for over 20 years, what better like confluence of all the things I love to come together? So that's a selfish response, but I think it's also at Sac State and the event being hosted at Sac State, it's a great opportunity to expose the world to what an innovative, a very Americana experience and opportunity can look like. And for some people, these are the only Americans they're going to maybe ever meet. And so it's a huge responsibility and opportunity to show who and what we are.
For the U.S., it's not really our poor person sport. Mm-hmm. Everywhere else it is. But the event itself is designed to highlight people who have recently overcome homelessness, celebrate that achievement, and kind of create a cohort of 500 world leaders to go back to their lives and their communities and help others overcome that. And I say that because soccer is not like the solution. It's a solution for a lot of people. And if there is a solution, there's probably another one. And so this is just where we found success. And, like I said, I described the event is 51 nations are a part of it. It's 48 men's teams, usually 16 women's teams.
Wow.
So that's 500 players who have experienced homelessness within the last 2 years of their life. So the tournament or Homeless World Cup has membership with countries, different countries. And, they have like this is what we need a country to offer and to do to be a member. And so they do the day-to-day work with, the people that live in their community. And then as an incentive is you can be, represent your country in the Homeless World Cup and essentially become an ambassador of, homelessness can be overcome. Yeah, the word homeless is a big turnoff to a lot of people. The great thing about this event is it's very fun to watch. I mean, we'll have 400 games in the 7 days. And
how many?
400.
Wow.
Small fields, 14-minute games, super fast.
Okay.
Super fast. Some teams are phenomenal. It's insane to watch them play. Some are, this is their lifeline. This is like my team that I was on, where they're
in Brazil.
This is what's keeping them moving forward.
18 to 55-year-old.
Yep, he said it. And it's, you get to see individuals in, we perceive athletes as strong, champions, capable, able, resilient. When we see someone on the street, I don't think those are the words that would describe that person to them.
I would agree.
So the idea is to take that same person, bring out the other good stuff in them, showcase that, and remind people that, those things can live within somebody who's not demonstrating them. And if we can bring that out, then we can change lives. And so the idea of the tournament is a chance for the players all come willing to share their stories. They're very proud of what they've done. They've earned it. They've overcome a lot. Each country has very different challenges, which is, again, like homelessness is this global thing.
Homelessness is very isolating, and I think being part of a team is something that some of these guys might not have felt for a long time. So being part of a team, not being on your own anymore, but also knowing that those players in your team or those players you're playing against have been in your position as well, and it's a very level playing field. So that isolation is difficult for anyone across the world, but when you add in being homeless as well, then I imagine it's equally as hard. So it's an important issue, and we're a global charity, so we have a window, we have a kind of a way in to see what homelessness is like in India, what homelessness is like in England, what homelessness is like is here in America. And it's different and impacts people in a different way. But again, football brings people together, and it's going to be a big thing for us after having 4 years without the tournament. We can't wait to bring it back.
When we go to the tournaments, they're very surprised to hear that we have eligible U.S. players. It's very shocking to other countries that we have homelessness here. We do have a lot of resources, and we are very rich, but I assure you that our issues are very different than what they're dealing with in India. and South Africa. So when we get to hear how they're solving it, it's like, what are we missing?
We have money.
Yes, we have money, but is that the only solution? And what we usually hear, no matter if somebody was a refugee or they were sex trafficked or they were living on the streets as a child or addicted to drugs, at some point in their life, they felt hopeless, they felt depressed, they felt alone, they felt disconnected. They all joined their different soccer programs and they started to feel hope. They felt a part of, they thought their lives mattered, and then they became willing to help others. Those are the things that are the same. The soccer varies.
Which allows them then to integrate back into society
Yes.
properly.
Yes. And for most countries, if you're a soccer fan, there's plenty of space for you.
Yes.
Like that, the U.S. is behind on that a little bit. We're getting there.
Yeah.
But that was the idea, is like, this is a new community. Whether you're going to be nobody really comes to play professionally, unless you were me. But they fall in love with the game. They can either continue to play it the rest of their life, or they can be a fan of it, but they're entering another community, and they get to stay involved in their programs. And now they're equipped to give that opportunity to somebody else. But the stories that these players have is almost more powerful than anything else, because it tells us what really matters. Usually what we find is it's time, it's relationships, it's a safe space, it's friends or community, and it's trust, Yes, houses, yes, resources, but you need those other things before someone's willing to use a resource. From what our experience is. A lot of times when we've taken players, U.S. players, to another country, they hear these stories and they realize how much more opportunity they have. So they come back and they utilize the resources even more.
I can only imagine the enthusiasm when you hear some of those stories in these other countries and what these people have been through, to say, in the United States, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
I have access to XYZ, whatever it may be, in their
Often
particular
they're
city.
like, you can have more than one job. Like, I would have 10 jobs if and so
Right.
that's not always, but those are the conversations. But again, there's this root of, hopelessness, disconnected, feeling alone. Those are always the beginning. And then the end is like the opposite. And that is a human thing.
I think there's two things kind of on the pitch and then off the pitch. So on the pitch, we're here at the moment in the soccer park in Sacramento, and the feeling of togetherness when you're on the pitch, everyone's at the same playing level, so there's no kind of hierarchy. But also off the pitch, so I've been fortunate enough to hear stories of previous tournaments, and there's so many cultures that come together, but football or soccer is a universal language, and everyone can bond over that language. So I think you see a big impact on and off the pitch, and hopefully we can take this World Cup further after Sacramento and go to different places across the globe and tell the story. So yeah, it's called the beautiful game, football, and I think this is one of the aspects of the Homeless World Cup. It's a beautiful thing to do, and we can't wait.
The Homeless World Cup allows us to realize this is like a human issue, and there's a lot of different ways to address it. I think our goal bringing it to Sacramento is that we can get people to recognize, the things that are really effective, see people who have less resources that are doing it, and like, how can we start to do more of that stuff? But also when we have a lot of conflict and there's a lot of political and there's divisiveness around the issue. So like, just like soccer, like, you can't do it alone. You got to start working together as a team.
That's a great segue to bring it into Sacramento specifically. So tell me a little bit about that. The Homeless World Cup is actually going to be here.
Yes, it is. We were surprised. The Homeless World Cup has existed for 20 years, has never before been in the U.S. They have wanted it to be, but the time wasn't right. And I think we have really good relationships in Sacramento. We were able to get it to come. Really good relationship with Sacramento State, so that helped a lot. And, I personally, I never imagined bringing the tournament here. I always wanted to bring it to the U.S. I didn't I didn't know Sacramento was where
Right
it
in your
would land.
backyard, your home.
Yeah, we knew we wanted to host it, and I know the Homeless World Cup organizers were desperate to have an event after the pandemic because the other country, this is a big part of their programming, and so we've all missed it. And so it was like, can we make it work in Sacramento? And we found out we could, and so it's going to be here July 8th through July 15th at the Hornet Stadium.
That's fantastic. And you want to know what's so cool about that? Here you are, you wanted to get the global stage as the player, but you're getting the global stage now as the director of the organization. You get this global platform. You're bringing the world to Sacramento. And to the world, this is the United States, number one, but California, the United States, that's as good as it gets.
Yeah. So it's exciting. It's a bit surreal. This is something my wife and I have experienced this. Every year we've gone to the tournament as coaches or volunteers because of the spirit and the atmosphere is just like healing to your soul. And we haven't found anything else that does that. So every year we've gone just for our own sanity and like our own, quality of life. But we've always wanted to share it with people because it sounds crazy when you're telling someone about it. We get that look often.
Right.
So, we've tried to get people to go to experience it. So bringing it here is incredible. And we have a community, I think, that wants to do something different. That makes me really proud. As an alumni of Sac State, is unreal to be having, all these people from around the world at the college that, we went to, the fields that we played on.
The recognition for not only the city, but for the university, the anchor University of Sacramento.
Yes.
But just unbelievable. And as we were talking earlier, before we started recording, 500 players, international players are coming to Sacramento, 200 volunteers internationally, roughly another 200 coming to the city from the statewide organizations. Yep. I mean, not only is it a big deal from a production standpoint, but then you have the people who come to watch it as well. And I think you mentioned 10,000 is the expectation.
Yeah.
I mean, what an awareness on a global stage, on an international, worldwide stage, to be able to bring that to our city when we know we've got an issue with our own homelessness situation. And here we are hosting something that can really transition and change that perception incredibly dramatically.
It's exciting. It's exciting to have found partners who get it and understand. Like, we don't expect to end homelessness by having this event.
Of course.
But we do know it's going to change a lot of lives that are going to go back into the world. And hopefully, most importantly, it also changes the lives of people in Sacramento and the families and the kids and the people who are maybe thinking about, maybe I'll give that shelter a try. Like, we have unused resources that it doesn't make sense why someone's choosing to sleep outside during this weather when they can be inside. Like, what is going on? And I think, hopefully this helps us to use the resources that we have available more efficiently and then really get everybody on board of, what are we really solving? Mm-hmm. And it's not just people camping outside. This is something bigger.
Well, and if the people who see that this is an opportunity for them, or if nothing else, that it's for their children to break that cycle of poverty or that generational issue that just continues, then it's done some good. And obviously we have another issue with the homelessness, that is mental illness, but if we could get the percentage of people who are capable doing something, my gosh, it would change it considerably. And
it's hard to know, that's the tough thing, is it's hard to know who's really capable or willing. And I'll give you an example. We worked with, we had a lot of rough, people who have not respected the law for their entire life, right? And in street soccer, there's a rule. The goalie has an arc. There's like an arc around the goal. The goalie stays inside, does not come out. Nobody else can cross that line. Otherwise, it's a penalty kick.
Mm-hmm.
People that I have seen break almost every single law you can, hard stop when they get near that line.
Which speaks volumes.
It's like, what? You know, because they're invested and they care about their teammates. Like, you know, they understand. And so those are the things that we learn about someone where I'm like, okay, like there's growth. We can grow this.
Right.
And sometimes, you know, like it's not possible and like that's fine. But we have, you know, there is a way. We want to make sure people who are willing and who want something different at least know where they can get it. And I don't know if people on the streets believe that they can change their lives. I don't know anymore, you know? Like if you ask them, do you think it's possible? If they would really say yes. And I don't know if the policymakers actually believe it's possible either.
Right.
So we want to demonstrate that it is. Here's some real stories and, you know, go from there and have some things in place already, which we do, that if somebody's like, I'm ready, like, okay.
Boy, what you're doing is so unique and so different from the usual approach, not just to general poverty, but to homelessness. And I think it's great that we've been able to share the story today to let people know that there really is something that's unique, that it is different. 600 people involved in just this year. Do the math, you know, how many years out if we could fix that many situations every year, how many people would take off the street and bring hope and joy, as you explain it too.
And what we found too is, you know, when someone's changed their life, consider mine. I would consider myself an asset to the community now. 13 years ago, not the case. We don't know what there is to gain from having these folks re-enter the community when they have value or when they feel purpose. That's something we can't know, but it's probably going to be better for us. We can't just numb it out. And so we know this event gives that to the volunteers. It gives value and purpose to the teams and the players. And I think it will give that to the public too. But we just considering that, you know, that was my experience and we're going to have about 500 of me's. This, you know, I was 9 months sober, a little bit nervous going into Brazil and had no idea what to expect. And that's the impact it had. And we have a lot of numbers that show that's what people leave with. So it's like, what do we have? How can we use, you know, what people are made of differently, I guess? And if they can feel value and they can feel purpose, does that look different? What they're doing day to day look different?
Well, look where you are 12 years later.
Yeah. So,
congratulations to you.
Thank
Congratulations to us in Sacramento, because you truly are an asset.
Thank you.
So before we wrap, could you let us know, how do we get all the information we need for the event and about street soccer?
Yeah, websites. Street Soccer USA is got all of our cities and our Sacramento page on there. That's www.streetsoccerusa.org. Anything for the Homeless World Cup will be at the Homeless World Cup's website, www.homelessworldcup.org. Our volunteer link is on that website as well.
Great.
Yeah.
I would imagine there's going to be a lot of people that have an interest in saying, how can I help?
Yeah.
And this is a real tangible way you can help, not throw a few bucks at it. We don't need more money.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, in the grand scheme of things, we need people to experience and help.
And come cheer these teams on. Like,
yes.
If you like soccer, this version is the best. It's like watching a highlight reel. It's very fun and exciting. But fill the seat. Like, cheer on a country, take your kids, you know, have a good time. It'll be a blast. That's helpful. Like, open your mind and show up.
And what a great story to share with your children.
Yeah.
Hey, look, that boy, girl, whomever out there on the field had a very different situation than you. You go play soccer and it's, you know, rec league, or it's competitive. Yeah. You're traveling all over the place, and think about that.
And wait till you see how good they are. Yeah. Like, they're playing a lot of these countries, Brazil, Chile, Mexico. They're playing at a level we don't see here often.
That's fun.
Yeah.
It'll
be good.
Lisa, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Nonprofit Podcast series. I hope you enjoyed the episode. If what you heard moved you, please reach out to that organization and do what you can to help. If you like and appreciate what we're doing to support local nonprofits, please give us a positive review, subscribe, and share. If you're a nonprofit with an interest in participating in an episode, you can reach us at info@multipointstrategies.com. The Nonprofit Podcast Network is a production of Multipoint Content Strategies and is recorded and edited by Hear Me Now Studio.